and pass the virtual microphone over to Dr. Anthony Falsetti. Tony?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to, well, I don't see you, but it is a pleasure to spend some time with you. I think I'll just go ahead and start with the presentation because I know people's time is valuable, and I want to respect that. So let me, oops, that did not work. Hold on. All right, so my presentation is actually going to be a little bit different than the others, but I think it's because the forensic science program has this really unique facility, opportunity when we come out to SciTech, and it's something that's going on as we speak in the background. So who am I? I will introduce myself. I'm a board certified forensic anthropologist. I've had the opportunity to run human identification labs, not only in the US, but abroad. My background, I come from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, which was the home for the first human remains facility in the world. And one of the reasons that I do what I do is that studying human remains aids law enforcement, and it promotes identifying unidentified persons. So I am one of 8 faculty in the forensic science program here at George Mason. We are in the College of Science, and we offer a Bachelor of Science in Forensic Science and an undergrad minor for those who are studying in other areas. And then we have a Master's of Science in Forensic Science that has multiple concentrations depending on your interest. It includes crime scene, chemistry, biology, and biometric identity analysis. And we have proposed a new concentration that it is in the works, shall we say. And it's a professional science master's in forensic science. And we also have certificates at the graduate level. So if you are in biology, or if you're studying with our colleagues in systems biology, you can get a graduate certificate in forensic science if one of those fields is intriguing to you. So that's who I am. That's what the forensic science program is. Like I said, I'm one of 8. We have 4 of our faculty members are former FBI agents, and their specialties include chemistry, psychology. One of them was the former director of the FBI laboratory, and molecular biology is another category that they represent. All of our faculty have operational backgrounds, meaning they've either been in laboratories, run laboratories. Our other faculty are from the Maryland State Police, as well as Prince William County Police Department. So again, a very hands-on, very operational group. And I'm just lucky enough to represent everyone today. So, because I know not everyone knows what forensic anthropology is, but many people have probably watched the TV show Bones. It's not quite like that. Unfortunately, we don't have quite the level of instrumentation that they do on Bones, but it's basically like all of the forensic sciences, and that is it's the application of the principles of that science. And so for forensic anthropology, it's the application of that science to the documentation, collection, and recovery of human remains, of bones. And it's all in application to the legal process is where we practice. Briefly, what is the role? Well, generally the forensic anthropologist assists law enforcement or the medical examiner in determining the biological profile of an individual. How long have they been dead? And we're interested in information about the death event, evidence of injury, trauma, any prior trauma, anything that'll help us identify. That kind of circles back to the first bullet, is anything that'll help us identify the individual. So what I want to do today is just focus on the post-mortem interval, or the time since death, because leads directly into, our new laboratory out at SciTech. And I know that's the focus of this presentation. So why is understanding the time since death important in a medical legal context? Well, actually, knowing the time since death may actually help determine who the decedent might be. It may tie into other cases. You can certainly absolve or incriminate suspects circumstantially, involved in the death, if you know when the death occurred. And it may also help determine the cause and manner. So the time since death, or the postmortem interval, is something that's really important in a medical legal investigation. So very briefly, I do not intend to make everyone a medical examiner here, but there are three mechanisms that we generally look at when we're trying to determine the time since death. Something called livor mortis, rigor mortis, and algor mortis. And these are conditions that the body passes through. They're like phases that the body will pass through. Rigor mortis is probably the characterization that most people are familiar with from TV. It's when the body is stiffening. It's usually what, the detective asks, the CSI, the first thing is, how long has the person been dead? Well, they'll mention something about rigor mortis. And if you'll notice, rigor mortis is usually gone after about 36 hours. And then there's algor mortis, which is the calculation of how the postmortem interval based on the temperature, the actual temperature of the body. Well, at some point, the body is going to return to the ambient temperature in the environment from which it was found. So understanding the time since death and its limitations is the focus of our new facility, because after, as you can see, about 36 hours, roughly, it's an estimate. It's much more of a guess. And when you're making these kinds of appeals in court, you have to be accurate. So I'm going to start with a case that I was involved with in Florida. This is Cheryl Ann Camiso. She was an 18-year-old down in Brandon, Florida, who was a dancer and disappeared in April of 1989. In 1995, March 27th, a body is found on I-275 south. Going south, if anyone's been to Florida, 75 and 275. 275 will take you towards the Tampa airport if you're heading south. A body was discovered, as I said, by an individual who was sent out to clean up the side of the roadway. They discovered bones. Those bones were taken to the medical examiner, and as you see, law enforcement was called out and systematically recovered skeletal remains over the course of several days. You see sort of this traditional sifting of the evidence that was coming from along that fence line. That fence line had been covered in water for a period of time. Simply the way the roads are graded, water will slough off to the sides and often pools. So we're faced with a couple of things. One is who is the individual and how long have they laid by the side of the road? This individual named Franklin Delano Floyd, he and his girlfriend and Camiso worked together as dancers. There's reference of an argument that Floyd had with Camiso in April of '89. Floyd leaves Florida with Suzanne, his girlfriend, and they wind up in Oklahoma. This is a very complicated case. It's a fascinating case. But some keys and why the postmortem interval is very important is how long had Cheryl been dead? We eventually identified her through dental. The suspect, Delano Floyd, claimed to have been in Oklahoma, and he was, and in fact, in jail. So he was in custody. He had a very good alibi. So myself and a forensic botanist, Dr. David Hall from the University of Florida, we reviewed all the physical evidence that was remaining, including the skeletal remains, which were in my laboratory at the time. And there were evidence containers that had tree roots that had been cut from the scene. Remember, she was found by the side of the road, or the skeleton was. Dr. Hall was able to identify the species. It was a pepper plant, which I guess is fairly common, and it grows rapidly in Florida. By looking at the amount of growth that was present and understanding the normal growth cycle of the plants, he was able to narrow down the post-mortem interval, which ultimately made it possible for Delano Floyd to have been in Florida at the time of Cheryl's death. Delano Floyd was found guilty, testified in his trial, so did Dr. Hall, and was sentenced to death in the state of Florida. So the time since death is incredibly important beyond 48 hours. So how is George Mason getting involved in this? Well, we are creating what we're calling the Forensic Science Research and Training Facility, or laboratory. I suspect people will want to call it the Body Farm, and so I'll just acknowledge that now. It's going to be on the SciTech campus. It will be the 8th in the world. We'll join the 7 others. It'll be the first one, in the Mid-Atlantic. It's a college-wide effort of the College of Science. It's being led by the Forensic Science program. It'll benefit our students. They'll be on the cutting edge of developing forensic science research pertinent to the criminal justice system. In fact, some of the people who are in this webinar will be lucky and have opportunities to work with them. We're already working with some of them. The alumni of our program will be sought after because they will have this experience, this practical experience that's backed up by science. And we will solve cases. People may wonder where the donor is going to come from. In compliance with the state of Virginia, all of our donors will come through the anatomical gifting program of the state. Our laboratory will fall under VSAP's criteria for compliance, meaning the donors will be screened, the donors will be safe prior to arriving to Mason, and they will only arrive at Mason if that's what they have elected. It's going to be about 5 acres. It highlights our commitment to forensic science and science in general. It will promote collegial collaborations. It already has, not only with folks in our own college, but we've already reached outside into the community, working with local law enforcement, as well as other partners. And it's going to be a focal point for a lot of really fascinating and interesting research for many years to come. Why is it important? It's the only outdoor research facility in the Mid-Atlantic. It gives us a very unique opportunity to study the environment here in the Mid-Atlantic as it relates to time since death, or the postmortem interval. We will become a focal point. There are only 7 other facilities. We've already reached out to those other 7, and we are cooperating. They will use our data. We will have an opportunity to use theirs, and we will do joint research projects. Our position here near the District of Columbia and all of the federal agencies provides so many opportunities for us to partner, and we've already partnered with many of them. Give you some sense of what we're talking about. This is an aerial of the Prince William campus. We are looking, I guess if it's on your screen, in the upper left, off of what is in between the Piedmont Trail and Wellington Road. That seemed to be the best location. It was far enough away from most of the activities on the campus and as far as the campus plan goes. This is the approved fencing plan. And so we are up in that northwest corner. We will have 2 fences. We'll have an outer fence that'll be 10 feet tall, and then an interior fence where the donors will be placed. All of that fencing will have screening. So you will not be able to see the research activities going on should you happen to wander by. That's out of respect for our neighbors as well as the donors themselves. And so we're excited to have this opportunity. We'll be able to do a lot of training, not only of Mason students, but our partners as well. And some really exciting research that's already getting underway as we speak. Some of our current partners, just a list here: the Virginia Medical Examiner's Office, UVA, the District of Columbia Medical Examiner's Office, Anthropology Department, Natural History Smithsonian, NCIS, and others. We just have a host of individuals really excited about it, almost as excited as we are. Some of the activities we currently have is we're doing soil taxonomy and chemical characterization of the soils before there's any donor, sort of setting these baselines. We've worked with Fairfax County Police, establishing some scenarios that they have run into in some of their casework that they would like some research on. And we're working with GMU Police, obviously our own police, and Prince William County on trying to distinguish between scent and odor, the 2 different ways of characterizing the chemistry of decomposition, if you will. And how do body recovery dogs' noses work? We'd really like to know. So I know I went through that kind of quickly. I wanted to get us back on time, but thank you. And I am happy to answer any questions you might have. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tony. If there are any questions, please feel free to raise your hand and I can give you voice, or put your question in the Q&A box or the chat box. We're watching both of those. There is one question which you may have answered. In forensic anthropology, it seemed like the term was a term for bones only. So in forensic anthropology, is the focus bones, whereas the forensic science department or this project will have a much bigger umbrella. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. My area of expertise is the bones, and it's from the bones that we'll hopefully identify the individual, whether it's through DNA or other means. But other colleagues, not only in the College of Science, but in the forensic science program, our chemistry folks are very interested in scent versus odor. And our molecular biologist is interested in how do we get good DNA profiles from degraded bones, since that'll be the source of DNA. And because we're using donors, we have a really terrific opportunity, because we'll actually know who they were. And we can, working with known individuals makes the experimentation process much easier. So I hope I answered that question. Again, I'm the bone person, but the whole program will be involved.
And with the assumption that that not only the outdoor space, but you'll be increasingly utilizing indoor space on or around the SciTech campus, will there be indoor laboratories for your students to work in?
Yes. Initially, yes. I mean, the answer is yes. We are waiting for the Bull Run Annex to be completed. The goal is that the entire forensic science program will move out to SciTech. We are waiting for some of our colleagues to move out of spaces on the 3rd floor of Catherine G. Johnson and there are labs there. The chemistry labs and biology labs are there. And there's some space that we are looking to rehab into space for crime scene and other of our course needs.
And one last question. Do you have a communications person who might be managing the storytelling as things evolve, so that those of us that are interested in tooting your horn can share contemporary information with our publics?
Yeah, so John Hollis in the College of Science is our main go-to person. You know, we also, the Forensic Science program has a Facebook page, and Professor Kelly Knight is always on Twitter and Instagram. So we're getting this story out, but we're a little slow, but it's getting out there.
Do any of our other panelists have a question? If not, we're approaching.
I have a quick question. Tony,
Don, go ahead.
are there any body farms that study the distribution of the remains by wild animals? I mean, since you guys have 2 fences, that's obviously not going to happen here, but somewhere.
Yes, there's a particularly large facility at Texas State. They have 11 acres. And so they have done some studies of, yeah, I guess you would call it dispersion. They've done some at Tennessee. One of the things that we have learned is it doesn't take much to disturb human remains. There's a documented research of crows coming in and completely reorienting the body, so that, you know, if that's your only interpretation of it, you might be completely wrong. So, I mean, we'll be able to study it within a single acre. Which
you have 5 acres.
Right. So, you know, our goal is to, you know, see what happens within that 5 acres, knowing that that's the limitation.
And is there a worry from the university or the city or the county of vultures? I mean, it's pretty ugly if you see a vulture concentration.
Yeah, that has come up. I don't know how to answer that. Have we thought about it? Yes. There are, and I didn't show it here, but there are ways to keep the bodies away from the vultures. Shall we say, there are cages that can be put on top of them that will at least protect them. So the nice thing about that location is we won't be cutting down any foliage, and so it's pretty densely wooded, and our hope is that that will dissuade them somewhat.
Okay, thanks.